Hello everybody, welcome to Awesome Rusty Bucket. Subscribe to the channel. I'm trying to hit 100k, so I'd most appreciate your subscription. Also drop a like, only takes 1 second. This is Hot Takes. Let's get into it. The Bulls are one of the worst developing... What the fuck? The Bulls are one of the worst developing in the NBA. Got it. Ever since 2016, almost all the players we have drafted have become important pieces on other teams. Markkanen and Portis are the best examples, with Kobe, Hutchinson, Williams making no progress ever since they have been drafted. Well, Hutchinson probably just wasn't that good. Same goes for Kobe White, really. And Patrick Williams, I actually do think has made a ton of progress since he has been drafted, especially as of late as he has looked for his shot more. And I honestly believe the potential that had been projected onto him is still somewhat in there, and really just the context of the team has been something that his mentality doesn't really allow him to overtake. Like, if he's surrounded by a bunch of good players, Patrick just simply has the mentality to, not really force things. But if the team were to blow it up, let's say, and actually manage to be pretty good, or not be pretty good, but actually manage to get him opportunities and have players bad around him enough that he's okay shooting the ball, then I could actually see him starting to be the scorer that we think he can be on top of the defender that he's especially been much more lately. That said, do the Bulls have a bad track record developing talent? Absolutely. I don't think it helps that the Bulls haven't really had a good coach ever since Tom Thibodeau, and even then he had a lot of questionable practices. So with that being the case, yeah, the Bulls suck at development. I'm aware of that. The Bulls should blow it up and focus on Pat as the first option. Well, what do you know? That's practically what I said a second ago. I will say I would be cool with him being the first option for, half a season or 1 season or whatever, but I don't think Patrick should be viewed as a long-term first option by any stretch of the imagination. I think that Patrick in the long run will end up being a really, really good defensive player, possibly even borderline all defensive, and a guy who can get you 18 a game on pretty good efficiency, good three-point shooter, can create a little bit but not an excessive amount, maybe even up to 20 some seasons, but not a primary shot creator. Honestly, if there was a player I would project him to be like, it would be something like OG Anunoby. I think that's probably the realistic and fair place to put him at this point. Maybe Jeremy Grant in terms of the shot creation on more of an upside. But yeah, long-term Patrick is not a first option. If you want to spend some time on it to get him some run, to get him some reps, to get him used to a stronger or heavier role, that's absolutely fine. First option would be a mistake. NBA Rivals Week sucks. These rivalries, other than the Grizzlies Warriors, are forced and have died when you can see most of the players are calm, are taking pictures with one another after games. I disagree with the notion that because players are friendly with each other, that means it's not a rivalry. I'm friendly with a lot of, my friends, but when it comes time to play basketball, I actually go hard and want to beat them so that I can brag about it after, right? Same thing kind of applies here. There's still competitiveness in friendships. It does not have to be hatred. And I feel like that's the issue that people have when appreciating rivalries in today's context. Is people say that they don't exist. I don't think that's necessarily true. I just don't think they're as, obvious with their dislike for each other, and I don't think they dislike each other, but that doesn't mean things are not competitive. I think that's it's painted a little bit too black and white in that regard. That said, I think the lack of rivalries more has to do with how much teams fluctuate now and less to do with people hating each other or whatever. It's just that what teams are in and out of contention and being the top teams in the league and all that kind of fluctuates, whereas we had a Cavs Warriors thing for 5 years, and that's probably the most recent long-term ordeal. But the best thing for rivalries is playoff matchups and consistent playoff matchups, and teams don't really hold up like they used to, partially because players have to cover more space and injuries are more of an issue, but also just because of the volatility of NBA rosters these days. Things do not stay the same for as long, and that's the problem, not that players are friends with each other. Charles Barkley and Michael Jordan were friends with each other off of the course, and Michael Jordan still tried to rip his head off in the '93 finals, and succeeded, mind you. Give it a maximum of 20 years for there to be a better shooter than Steph. Kids these days and their access to resources So the suggestion here is that there one day will be a better three-point shooter than Steph, and frankly, it's not the most unreasonable take in the world just by nature of, like, Steph went into this, like, valuing his shooting to that degree, but the idea of valuing your shooting as much as Steph did in terms of developing yourself as a basketball player is now much more prominent. Like, I go to the Y, and sometimes there are players on the high school team there, I know because they're much better than me, and they love a pull-up three, and so many of them are so good at it, and I'm like, dude, if I had grown up with Stephen Curry being like my guy instead of Kobe, like, I would be out here probably being a sniper from three, but I just didn't value it to the degree that they do. And now kids these days, just talking about how I come off as older, kids these days love the three ball, and there's probably someone out there that, again, 20 years down the line will come out there and be like, wow, this guy shot the basketball 500 times a day every day since he was 10, and it shows, and potentially could be in that conversation with Steph as the greatest shooter of all time. I think it's possible. I think, no one thought someone could overcome Magic Johnson. Someone thought that no one could overcome Michael Jordan. Someone thought that no one could overcome LeBron. And I'm sure eventually someone will, because really, until we destroy each other and end the world, which will happen. But until then, time's just going to keep on ticking, and the league's going to keep happening, and human development will continue to happen. And 20, 30 years down the line, we're going to have completely different context for the players that we do right now, because there's been 20, 30 years of NBA history that is different and is contrasting to the way things are now. And there will be people who, as there are now, saying things about like the 90s, who will talk crap about what we're witnessing right now and say that that wasn't real basketball, now is, That's just the nature of things. And eventually, one day, anything is possible, pretty much. You can project that of anybody. One day, somebody will be a better defender than Hakeem Olajuwon. One day, someone will be a better passer than Magic Johnson or LeBron, It will happen eventually, so long as humanity continues to survive and the league continues to survive along with it. The Kings are legit title contenders. I was actually thinking about this the other day, if there was validity to that, because from an offensive perspective, there are very few teams that can hold a candle to the Sacramento Kings. And defensively, from what I understand, I could be wrong because I haven't looked at their stats in a while, but I think their defense is like doing the job. It's not extraordinary by any means, but it's getting by, and like Domantas Sabonis, who was previously a weak defender earlier in his career, has been a lot stronger defensively with them this year. So I think it would really just be a matter of how high is the ceiling of that defense, because I think the ceiling of their offense is very clearly established. It could come down to an experience factor, because De'Aaron Fox will be playing in his first playoff series, but if experience is not their undoing, if they manage to persevere through all those potential growing pains, because there's other players here who will be making their playoff debut or don't have barely dipped their toe in it. Even Sabonis has really barely dipped his toe in it. If experience is not their undoing, I do think they could go quite far. And then I would just say not having a superstar will be their undoing, where they'll face a Nuggets team where they just simply can't match what Jokic can do, or the Grizzlies with Ja, or the Warriors with Steph. Probably something like that would be the end of them rather than an experience, I think. But it's possible. Whatever. I think they're definitely in a little bit of a gray area in between contender and just really good playoff team. And if they had been doing this for longer and this was a multi-year thing, people would start to have that conversation for sure. Kyrie Irving being a poor first option is a bad narrative. He led the Celtics to the first seed in 2018 and 2019. In 2018, 2019 was a much tougher East than the year before, leading to them going out sooner in the playoffs, and they were not actually better without him. I think Kyrie, as your first option and the best player on your team, can definitely be a very good regular season team. I just don't trust it in the playoffs. And specifically, it's not as though Kyrie cannot be the best scorer on a team, because I think Kyrie is one of the best scorers of all time. But there's a difference between being the first scoring option and being the best player on a team. And I think Kyrie is very capable of being the best scorer on a team that is on a championship level. But best player, I don't know that his all-around game is strong enough for that to really be the case. And I don't think his scoring punch, given that his volume is not ever like, it's not like he's really going out there going to average 40 in a series or anything like that. He's generally like pretty consistently a 23 to 29, 30 point per game score, you know? It's not quite enough for me to be confident that Kyrie could really be the best player on a team that wins a championship. But the notion that he's a bad first option often comes from the leadership angle and the negative things that he contributed to that team going through its issues. I think sometimes it's overblown and overblamed on him, but ultimately it was definitely there. Don't know if this is a hot take, but SGA should be starting over Curry in the All-Star game. I know the media and fans want to see Steph start, but SGA obviously deserves it more. I would argue that yes, but seniority has always been a thing in the NBA, and that's kind of just the way the cookie crumbles. And SGA a couple years down the line is going to be someone who gets in through seniority. So this is just kind of the first logical step. I often understand, and I've understood this with my players on my team being first-time All-Stars in the past, that like they're not going to play that much their first time. It's almost universally the case. So I'm not losing sleep. Even Luka Doncic barely played in his first All-Star game. I'm not going to get mad about it. It's the way things are. It will change with time as that player continues to establish himself as one of the best players, as SGA is doing. But yeah, that was Hot Takes. Goodbye.